Storytime. Karma didn't do its job fast enough, so I had to take matters into my own hands. So a little background information. My best friend Allie had just passed away in a car crash. And for some reason, these two girls, Jackie and Jayla, decided that they were going to talk shit on her all the time for no reason. Like, they had some weird, unhealthy obsession with her for no reason. Like, the one time they literally put me in a group chat just so that way I could see them talking shit about her. So I told my best friends Christy and Megan about it, and we decided to come up with a plan to jump them. So in the morning and after school, Jayla and Jackie would walk by my house to get to theirs. So obviously we weren't going to do it in the morning because nobody had the energy for that. But we got baseball bats and everything else. And we did end up using them. Like, we ran up on them after school and we started to beat the shit out of them. I don't want this video to get taken down, so use your imagination because it was pretty bad. And both of them ended up in the ER. One girl was in a coma for the week and the other one had a broken collarbone. They ended up pressing charges, but my thing is, this is a girl who can't defend herself, so I would have done it. Here we go with another toxic best friend story time. So a little background information. So a couple of years ago, I became best friends with this one girl who we're going to call Sammy. Every year her family would go on a camping trip, and every year I couldn't go. Something would always come up even if it was last minute. Well, this year finally nothing was standing in the way so I could go on this freaking camping trip, and we had literally been planning this for like 6 months. So this plan was we would go up there in the afternoon after I was done with work and after she was done with school. Well, then she calls me and she asks me if I can call off work and go up a day early with her. And I told her, no, I can't do that. I already took off a bunch of time because I was sick and for my sister's wedding. So I need the money. So after I tell her I can't go up on Thursday, I would rather go on Friday like we said, she responds with, well, we're going on Thursday and either you can take the day off and join or not. And then I told her, I'm not driving when the whole plan was for you to drive. Like for part 2 about my extremely toxic best friend. So like I said, she tried to talk me into taking off work so that way we could go up on Thursday, but I told her no, I would rather stick with the plan and go up Friday. And then she says, well, you can do that, but we're all going up on Thursday, so you're gonna have to find your own ride. And then I told her, I'm not driving up there. I don't know this place. So at that point, I was like, fuck it. If they leave without me, they live without me. I do not care at this point. And I pretty much said that. If you want to go without me, then go without me. And she called me and she was like, you're being extremely rude. A little background information on Sammy. She was a super selfish, self-centered person. And she has like only child syndrome. Every time we hung out, we had to do what she wanted to do. I was super annoyed about this because I had already planned for this vacation. Meaning I took the time off work, I rearranged my whole schedule, and now I don't really know if I want to be friends with her. What do you guys think? Storytime about how my best friend was obsessed with me. And I'm not saying obsessed as in, oh my god, like, you know, she does her hair like me. No, I'm saying in a creepy way. So a little background information, I was 14 and it was the summer before I was going into high school. And I had this best friend who we're gonna call Madison. Now, I met Madison like a month before school ended. She was one of those kids that nobody really liked and nobody wanted to be near. But we were partnered up in this one class and she's actually really funny. So since summer just started, I invited her over to have a sleepover at my house. Everything went well, we were swimming, we watched movies. But my house was in a really wooded area, so if you had certain phone carriers, you wouldn't get any reception. So she asked if she could use my iPad to text her dad. And it was like 11 o'clock at night, so I let her use it. And then we went to sleep. Well, I woke up around 3 in the morning because my phone kept going off, like for part 2. Part 2 about how my best friend was obsessed with me in a creepy way. So like I said, I woke up at 3 in the morning because my phone kept going off and it wasn't dinging or anything. It was just the light flashing when it would go off and on. So I look around for Madison and then I see my bathroom light is on but the door is shut. So I just brush it off and I go on my phone and I see a bunch of text messages that were sent from me, but they weren't sent from me. Like, obviously, somebody had went on my iPad and started sending people messages. So I look at these messages, and it's all texting Madison. And I kid you not, it's literally pictures of me while I'm sleeping that she sent to herself. Like, there was a picture of my hair, a picture of one of my birthmarks. And then on her side of the nightstand, there was literally a lock of my hair. Like, she cut my hair off. And it was in a Ziploc bag. So at this point, I'm actually really creeped out and I go and tell my mom. And my mom talked to her mom and apparently she's done this story time about why you should never, ever, ever do drugs. So a little background information. In my town, on the 15th of June this year, 2 girls got kidnapped in my hometown. So I kind of knew these 2 girls. I mean, they went to my school, but that was really it. Because low-key, I didn't want to be friends with them, and I kind of hated them. They were in 7th grade, I was in 8th grade, so they were probably like a year younger than me. Anyway, so it was a Wednesday, and the last time they had been seen was at 8 p.m. with a 30-year-old man. They were supposedly doing drugs outside of a McDonald's. Well, I guess this man saw that they had been doing drugs, and he wanted some. Before that, I guess he kind of eased into the question because he was like talking to them, getting to know them, and I guess he thought he had a really good shot at getting some drugs. But when he asked, they said no. So then he asked a few more times, and they finally gave them to him, but whenever they got closer, he grabbed both of them, put him in his van, and drove off. And he hid them in his house. Like for part 2. Part 2 of why you should never ever ever do drugs. So like I said, he asked for them again, and finally the girls decided to give him some. But when they got closer, he grabbed both of them and shoved them in his van, drove off. Well, he ended up driving to his house and decided to hide them there. Well, one of the girls' aunts posted something on Facebook saying that both of them were missing, and soon the news made an article that literally said, drug addict and her friend gets kidnapped. They went missing for like 6 days, and on the 22nd of June, they were found, but now they won't stop bragging about how fun it was to get kidnapped. And that is why, still to this day, I absolutely despise these girls. Storytime about how my fiance cheated on me with 10 other girls. So a little background information, I met this guy on Instagram, and we're gonna call him Bryce. Now, when him and I met, he was stationed in Korea, and he refused to ask me to be his girlfriend until he came home. So I waited an entire year for him to ask me to be his girlfriend. Which low-key should have been a red flag, but he made it seem romantic in some twisted, weird way. So fast forward, he comes home in February, and he kept to his promise. The first day that we met, he asked me to be his girlfriend. So I say yes, fast forward. Him and I started having a ton of arguments because of things that he was doing while he was in Korea. Fast forward, we're officially together for 9 months. So fast forward, of course, he gets deployed to Europe in like September of 2022. So this man decides that he's going to propose to me in July and then beg me to get married to him before he leaves. Now, I may have ignored the first red flags, but I'm not dumb. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how my boyfriend cheated on me with 10 other girls. So like I said, this man begs me to get married to him before he leaves, and thank goodness I didn't because divorce papers would have been served the same day. So fast forward, he starts acting super weird. He's going out 24/7. He's getting drunk. He's not wearing the ring that he begged me to get him. Yes, he literally begged me for a ring so that way women would know that he had a girlfriend. Well, then of course I get a DM from a girl on Instagram asking if him and I were still together. And then after talking to her, I realized he literally made a Tinder 2 days after he got deployed. And what was his excuse? Oh, I wanted to meet friends to teach me German. And listen, I was not born last night, so I kept that conversation going because I wanted to get to the bottom of what the fuck was actually going on. And then, of course, he finally comes clean that he cheated on me with a bunch of girls. Oh, and you want to know the icing on the cake? One of them was a minor. Yup. After I leave him, he has the audacity to ask for my ring back, but I threatened to tell Storytime about how I got pregnant by my boyfriend's younger brother, and he still doesn't know. So a little background information, I am 19 years old and I'm in college. So my boyfriend and I have been dating for about 2 years, and we're gonna call him Josh. The 2 years that we've been dating have been super rocky because he would try to hook up with other girls. Well, no, actually he wouldn't try. He would hook up with other girls. And then, him and I would break up and then we would get back together. Just your usual toxic relationship. The main reason why I kept going back to him was because he was super popular, and this made me feel like I was never going to find anybody better than him, so on and so forth. Now, Josh's brother is 21 years old, and somehow, someway, him and I started hooking up. Right around after the time I found out that my boyfriend was cheating on me with my cousin. Yes, my cousin. I'm saying that like I'm not hooking up with his brother. Anyways. Well, one day I realized that I haven't got my period in 2 months, so I took a pregnancy test, and it came back positive. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how I got pregnant by my boyfriend's younger brother, and he still doesn't know. So, like I said, my boyfriend cheated on me with my cousin, and somehow that led to me hooking up with his younger brother. Well, fast forward, one day I realized that I haven't gotten my period in 2 months, so I took a pregnancy test and it came back positive, of course. And the first thing that I did was go to Josh's brother because him and I were hooking up way more than my boyfriend and I were within the past few months. Well, we both came to the conclusion that I should just tell my boyfriend that it's his and see what happens from there. So I told my boyfriend I'm pregnant and he was super happy, gave me this whole speech about how he's going to be a better boyfriend for me and the baby, which in simpler terms pretty much means, yay babe, I'm going to stop cheating on you since you're pregnant, but only because you're pregnant. So now my boyfriend is raising my 1-year-old daughter who he thinks is his, and I'm still hooking up with his brother.
Story time about my boyfriend's crazy ex-girlfriend. So a little background information. So his ex-girlfriend's parents, they owned a security company, which sold cameras, alarms, and a few other things. So at the end of 2019, my boyfriend broke up with his ex-girlfriend. And by March of 2020, he started seeing me. And at first, we were just keeping things on the down low. Anyways, so after maybe 3 weeks of seeing my boyfriend, his ex sent me an Instagram message calling me a slut. It's the obsession for me. Anyways, what's even weirder is that she knew everything about my boyfriend and I, even the sexual things. Anyways, like I said, I thought that was really weird, so everything that she had sent me, I sent straight to him. Because I thought, obviously, that he had still been talking to her and had told her everything about us. But instantly, he gave me his phone and said go through it, and he had her blocked on everything. So even though it was weird, we moved on from that situation. Well, fast forward another 2 weeks, and his ex calls him while I'm at his house. Like for part 2.
Storytime about how this girl and her boyfriend beat me up. So a little background information, I was in 11th grade and I was 17 years old. And in the summer, my friend and I went to go and watch fireworks for the 4th of July at this park. And most of the people there went to a completely different school. But we ended up meeting this group of guys and I was really vibing with the one guy who was there. He was super cute, super chill, and we got along great. And I just want to put this out there, I did not think to ask that he had a girlfriend because he was being super flirtatious and just really wasn't acting like he had a girlfriend. I literally just hate how we have to ask people if they're in relationships now because they don't want to be honest or loyal. And then we would look like the bad guys because they were dishonest. Anyway, so him and I start to hang out a lot and he really likes me, I really like him. And we went to this football game at his school and we ended up doing the nasty. After that, I'm in the bleachers with my friends and one of my friends tells me, yeah, he has a girlfriend. So she couldn't have told me this before we did the nasty. Anyways, like for part 2. About how this guy and his girlfriend literally beat me up. So like I said, him and I did the nasty at the football game and then I go onto the bleachers with my friends and she tells me that he has a girlfriend. But I'm not gonna lie, at this point we had already been talking for 2 months and I really didn't care because I liked him and I wasn't just gonna turn my feelings off. First of all, I do not owe that girl any loyalty. Number 2, we were already intimate with each other, so I don't know what could make this situation worse than it already was. I mean, I did confront him about it and he told me that he was going to break up with her for me. So I believed him. I was like, whatever, I'm just going to wait for him to break it off with her and I'm still going to talk to him. So eventually he literally made me wait for like 2 more months. So what did I do? I told his girlfriend everything. I'm not gonna lie, it's not even that I wanted to be a good person. It was literally just to spite him. It's like, yeah, your man wants to be with me. He don't want you. This is the text messages of him telling me that he was going to break up with you. That day he called me and he was like, hey, do you want to story time about how I almost got kidnapped at a grocery store. So a little background information, I was 16 and it was during the summertime and I was super excited because I had just got my license, but my parents had this idea that if they made me drive around and do all their errands, that I would be a better driver. So I was pretty much like their BITCH. Anyway, so the one night my mom wanted to make this recipe that she saw on TikTok and she didn't have the right seasonings for it, so who did she tell to go to the store? Yours truly, me. And on Sundays, the mini market that was in our town would close at 4 o'clock. So I had to drive like 30 minutes away to the nearest Target. And when I got there, I had to park in the back because they had like 10 handicap spaces up front, another 10 for when you sit there and they bring your shit out to you, and another 5 whenever you're picking something up that you already ordered. But in all honesty, that didn't bother me because I had never heard about any girls getting trafficked at a grocery store. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how I almost got kidnapped at a grocery store. So like I said, I parked all the way in the back of the parking lot. I mean, okay, not all the way in the back, but I was damn near close. So I go in and I'm not too familiar with this Target. I've only been here a few times because the mini market in my hometown is usually the one that I go to. So I'm looking around and I realize that there's this little girl following me. But it seemed like she was more like keeping an eye on me. Like she would stand like 20 feet behind me, but just like stare at me, you know, peek through the aisles. And she did that for like 10 minutes. But whenever I finally went up to the checkout, she was gone and this woman came up to me.
She was like, oh my gosh, have you seen my daughter? She was running around the store. I don't know where she is. So I described the little girl to her that I saw. And she was like, yeah, that's her. I can't find her. Will you please help me look for her? And I didn't have the time for this because my parents were going to wring my neck. But I said, oh, part 3 about how I was almost kidnapped at a grocery store. So like I said, she asked me to help look for her daughter. And I was like, I'm going to go tell a Target employee. And she was like, no, don't worry. They're all already looking. They have security all over the place. And she was like, will you help me check the parking lot? Because I don't know if she left. She was like, I've been having them look for the past 10 minutes. So I didn't think anything of this because I didn't think that some lady would try to kidnap me. So I went into the parking lot with her and I'm like, okay, where do you think she would have went? Like, did you drive here? Did she maybe go to the car? And she was like, no, we live like 5 minutes down the road. Do you think that we could get in your car and drive around? And I said, yeah, because I thought that it would speed up the process. And my dad's truck was really high off the ground. So while we're walking, I'm like, I think someone's under my car. And she was like, what? No, it's probably just the shadow. And I'm like, no, there's someone under my car. So I turn around to walk back into the store and she starts like pulling my arm towards my car. So an employee called the police whenever I went in there, and long story short, they were trying to kidnap me. Story time. My boyfriend cheated on me with the girl best friend. So a little background information, I was 17 and a junior in high school, and my boyfriend and I had been dating for a year. But just a little backstory about when we got together. So there were definitely some red flags that I missed, okay? One of them being that he had a girl best friend. And I don't care what y'all have to say if that makes me insecure or what. But coming from someone who has been the girl best friend, I knew this was not good at all. Especially whenever we first started dating and she was still being super friendly with him. Meaning she would hold his hand, she would hang on him 24/7. And when I told him I was super uncomfortable with that and I felt like there needed to be some boundaries, he was like, yeah, I told you what it was whenever we got together. So if you don't like that, then just break up with me. Looking back on it now, that was also a red flag because I feel like he was telling me to break up with him so that way he didn't have to break up with me, like for part 2. Part 2 about how my boyfriend cheated on me with the girl best friend. So like I said, she would still hang all over him and he pretty much told me, if you don't like that, then you can leave. Obviously, I did not want to leave because I liked him and he was my boyfriend. So I just kept putting up with it, and eventually, we got 6 months into our relationship. So at that point, I'm thinking maybe I have a little bit more authority, to be like, hey, I don't like the way that she acts around you. You guys can't hang out like that anymore. And they would hang out alone together. He would take her to dinner. Which I literally tried telling him that the stuff that they do together is relationship stuff. And he was like, that's not true at all because we did all of this stuff before you and I even got together. So anyways, like I said, 6 months in, I'm like, hey, I don't like the way that you guys are hanging around each other. Once again, he gives me the same excuse. So he pretty much said that he didn't care. And the one night him and I were supposed to hang out, but he canceled on me last minute. And her and I didn't get along, and she never Snapchatted me before, but then I get a Snapchat of her and him making out at his house. Part 3 about why I will never ever babysit ever again. So like I said, I picked up the stack of towels and a camera that was recording fell out of it. And while I was home later that night, I was waiting for my mom to get home when I got a call from Will. And if you don't remember who that is, that's Autumn's dad. And of course I wasn't going to answer the phone because I was super weirded out and low-key scared. But then he left a voicemail. And he was like, hey, so, I know you have the camera. And this is kind of awkward, but I'm gonna need it back. I can pay you whatever you want, and I would prefer that we don't tell anybody about this. Sometimes I'm just really amazed at how stupid people are because as soon as my mom got home, I showed her the camera and I let her listen to the voicemail. So my mom called over Autumn's mom. So they called the police, and Autumn's mom kept trying to call Will, but his phone was going straight to voicemail. And she was like, yeah, he begged me not to come over here whenever you called. It's been a week since this happened, and Autumn's dad is currently running from the cops. Storytime about why I hate my brother's girlfriend. So a little background information, I was 14 years old and had just started my freshman year of high school, and my brother and his girlfriend were both seniors. And we're gonna call his girlfriend Riley. Now, Riley and my brother started dating in the middle of the summer, and you would think since they just started dating and basically just met each other that I wouldn't know her that well. But literally 2 days after they started dating, she started spending every single day at my house. I'm being serious, like she had a whole duffel bag that had basically her closet in it. But that wasn't the problem. So in the summertime, my parents would plan a lot of family activities, and since they were called family activities, his girlfriend wasn't allowed to go. I mean, I think she would have been allowed to go, but she was also really disrespectful to my mom. So after one of our family days, my parents asked my brother if Riley would be joining us for dinner, and he just ignored them and went up to his room. And my room's right next to his, so I could hear everything. And Riley called him like for part 2. Part 2 about why I hate my brother's girlfriend. So like I said, my room was right next to my brother, so I could literally hear everything. And I guess Riley called him and she was complaining about me. She was like, she's the reason why your mom doesn't like me. I feel like she's jealous of me. She doesn't want us to be together. Which was really weird because I didn't give a fuck about what my brother did. So fast forward, school finally starts. And Riley lived about 20 minutes away from us. So my brother told her that he couldn't go and pick her up for school every day. But obviously I would ride to school with him because we lived together. Anyways, eventually she had a problem with that too. So my brother and I had to start leaving 30 minutes early to get to school so we could pick her up. So the first time that we pick her up, we pull up to her house. And obviously I'm in the front seat and she's just standing there. So my brother rolls down the window and he's like, get in the fucking car, we're gonna be late. And then she literally has the audacity to start arguing with my brother in front of me about why she should get the front seat instead of me. Like for part 3. Part 3 about why I hated my brother's girlfriend. So like I said, once she got in, she started screaming about how she should get the front seat instead of me. So I turn around and I'm like, last time I checked, you've only been here for 2 months. Stay in your fucking lane. And then she starts crying because she's like, oh my god, your sister's so mean to me. Like, I just feel like I should have more respect as his girlfriend. So fast forward to the weekend, my mom said that she needs to have a talk with me. And she's like, honey, I know you may not like your brother's girlfriend, but you have to stop being mean to her. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I've only had one conversation with her in the last week, and that was to tell her to stay in her fucking lane. And then I told her about everything going on. So she calls my brother down to ask him if it's true. And my brother was pretty pissed off at me, but he wouldn't lie. So my mom said that she was not allowed over the house anymore, and that he wasn't allowed to go pick her up from school until I got my license. So that just caused more problems between her and my brother, so he broke up with her. And then she started spreading rumors that she broke up with him because there was something weird going on between him and I.
Part 3 about how I stole my best friend's boyfriend. So like I said, I went to the football game. She wasn't there because she had something else to do. I went up to him. I started flirting. I told him that he should break up with her and date me instead. And I also said that she was a bitch and a whole bunch of other stuff. And he was like, why would you say that about your best friend? And he was like, I would never date you. And I had a feeling this would happen. So I had photoshopped a picture of her and this guy that she sits next to in her lab class. And I showed it to him and I was like, see, she's cheating on you. So he was pissed off. He gave me his number. And the next day he came over to my house. We cuddled, watched movies, we kissed. After 3 months, Ashley found out. We hadn't talked to each other since then, but now I am 16 in 10th grade and still with her ex-boyfriend. Funny thing though, the picture that I photoshopped with her and that guy, she's literally dating him now. So you're welcome, I guess. But anyway, she still goes around talking shit on me. I mean, who can blame her? I did steal. Part 2 about how I stole my best friend's boyfriend. So like I said, she would talk shit about me all the time. And I only confronted her that one time, so she thought that we were all good. So the one day before class starts, she runs up to me. She's like, oh my god, you'll never guess what? I have a boyfriend. She's like, he's so cute. He's really popular. He's on the football team. And I was like, girl, whatever. Nobody cares. Until I'm sitting in my first class of the day and I remember that she made out with my boyfriend last year. I forgave her, of course. But because karma was taking a little bit too long, I figured I had to do something about it myself. So my plan was to hook up with her boyfriend. Do I feel bad about it? Absolutely not. So I went to my school's football game, and guess who I saw? My best friend's boyfriend. She couldn't make it that night. She had something to do, so I had him all to myself. So I went up to him, I started flirting with him, and I was like, oh, you should break up with your girlfriend and date me instead. But then he was like, I thought you guys were best friends and I would never date you. Like for part 3 about how I stole my best friend's boyfriend. So a little background information, I was 14 and in 8th grade. And we're gonna call my best friend Ashley. Ashley was really nice at first. She always had my back when I needed her. But then out of nowhere, she started being super rude to me. She turned into one of those pick-me girls that would always make fun of you in front of other guys, talk crap about you to the guy that you liked. Well, the one day I hear her talking shit about me whenever we were in class. And everybody could hear her. She was literally on the whole other side of the class. And I asked her, hey, like, why were you talking about me? She was like, no, I was talking about a different girl. And I had a pretty unique name, so I was like, who else in the school could you have been talking about? But I just brushed it off. Well, then we were in algebra class and I heard her talking shit about me again. How I do my makeup so bad and I can never get a boyfriend, like I'm so ugly and all that stuff. Well, she thought that I wasn't mad at her, so she came up to me the one day and was like, OMG, I have a boyfriend. Like for part 2. Story time about my unhealthy obsession with my ex-boyfriend. So a little background information, I was 18 and in 12th grade, and him and I have been dating for about 4 years, and it was around Thanksgiving, so it was pretty much college decision time. I got accepted into UCLA and I was really happy because it was super close to home, and my boyfriend, who we're gonna call Devin, got accepted there also. So I was super excited that we did not have to do the long distance thing, until a week later he calls me, and apparently he got some soccer scholarship, so now he's going to Berkeley. So I was like, okay, maybe we can make long distance work. Well, then he tells me that he doesn't want to make it work and he thinks that we should just break up. Well, a week after that, him and I were sleeping together again. So I thought that meant that we were back together. The one day I was leaving his house and I heard his mom talking about me. And she was like, oh, is she coming to the Christmas party? And I was super, super happy. Until Devin says, oh, we're not together anymore and I'm thinking of inviting a different girl. Well, a week later, the party rolls around and I decide that I'm going to show up anyways. Like for part 2. Storytime about my shitty ass ex-boyfriend. So a little background information. My ex and I have been dating for about 2 years. And throughout those 2 years, he was a dick. He would cheat on me, talk to other girls more than me, but of course I pretended that everything was perfect in my relationship. I would brag to all these people about how my relationship was so good, blah blah blah, and everything else. Because it's embarrassing whenever bitches can talk shit because your relationship is very toxic. Like, listen to this bullshit. The whole 2 years we were dating, I had over 10 girls DM me on Instagram saying that they screwed my boyfriend at his house. I never confronted him about it. I was just one of those girls that cared way too much about what everybody else thought. Okay, now fast forward. And it was a Friday at school, and Thanksgiving break was the following day. And him and I have this whole plan to spend the whole break together, because literally a week before that he was on vacation in North Carolina for 2 whole weeks. Well, instead of going with him after school, I decided to go home, get an overnight bag, like for part 2. Storytime about my shitty ass ex-boyfriend. So a little background information. My ex and I have been dating for about 2 years. And throughout those 2 years, he was a dick. He would cheat on me, talk to other girls more than me, but of course I pretended that everything was perfect in my relationship. I would brag to all these people about how my relationship was so good, blah blah blah, and everything else. Because it's embarrassing whenever bitches can talk shit because your relationship is very toxic. Like, listen to this bullshit. The whole 2 years we were dating, I had over 10 girls DM me on Instagram saying that they screwed my boyfriend at his house. I never confronted him about it. I was just one of those girls that cared way too much about what everybody else thought. Okay, now fast forward. And it was a Friday at school, and Thanksgiving break was the following day. And him and I have this whole plan to spend the whole break together, because literally a week before that he was on vacation in North Carolina for 2 whole weeks. Well, instead of going with him after school, I decided to go home, get an overnight bag, like for part 2. Part 2 about my shitty ex-boyfriend. So like I said, the original plan was for us to go together to his house after school. But I was like, I'm going to be spending the whole week over there. I should probably pack some clothes and get a shower. So after school, he drove me to my house. And he said that his parents wanted to have dinner together, so he had to go back to his house. And he would pick me up later. So when I got to my house, I got ready and everything, blah, blah, blah. And by this time, it was like 8 o'clock. Well, I kept texting and calling him, asking him where he's at, if he's coming to get me still. Then I realized that none of my text messages were going through. So then I go to text him on Snap. And what do you know? I couldn't find him on there. And then I call him off my mom's phone. He answers the phone and hangs up right away. Well, we were supposed to have a little party at his house too, that all of my friends were going to. So I texted every single one of them. None of them answered the phone. And I remembered that my one friend had shared her location with me before. So I went and looked at her location and where was she at? My boyfriend's house. So while I sat at home crying that whole week, he was throwing parties and cheating on me with my friends. And when we went back to school, he acted like we were never in a relationship. Part 2 about my unhealthy obsession with my ex-boyfriend. So like I said, he thought that he was bringing some random girl to his Christmas party, and I decided that I was going to show up there anyways. So I'm sitting in the car outside of his house the day of the Christmas party, pretty much just giving myself a little pep talk. Eventually I go up, I knock on the door, his dad answers, gives me a big hug, and tells me that he's downstairs with all of his cousins playing the video game. So I go downstairs, and as soon as I get down the stairs, all of his cousins look at me, and they give me the look of like, oh shit, she is not supposed to be here right now. And then I see the bathroom door closed with the light on. So I walk over, open the door, and what do I see? A girl from our school giving my boyfriend head. Well, my ex-boyfriend, but still, he was my boyfriend. So I didn't even give her time to get up before I started wailing on her. Few punches and kicks later, my boyfriend starts screaming in pain. After that, I got kicked out of the house, and I had to pay some medical bills because she bit my boyfriend. And I'm still on probation for beating her ass. Storytime about how my best friend got my house raided. So a little background information, I was 16 and in 11th grade, and we're gonna call my best friend Jenna. Jenna and I have been on and off friends since elementary school. Now, the reason why we were on and off friends was because Jenna was the type of person who ended up in drama all the time. And coincidentally, anytime that I would stop being her friend, I would be in no drama. Now, there have been multiple times where I've tried to break off our friendship for good, but Jenna, of course, was the type of girl who would threaten to unalive herself whenever things didn't go her way. And I low-key have a savior complex. Also, I literally lived right across the street from her. So it was very hard to cut this friendship off. Well, anyways, fast forward, so her and I are friends, which also wasn't good because she was a very bad influence on me. For example, I didn't have a driver's license, but I had a car. So of course I would go pick her up and her and I would fuck shit up together, aka do bad things. Well, the one night I let her drive and she ended up going to my ex-boyfriend's house, like for part 2 about how my best friend got my house raided. So like I said, no license, but I had a car and I let her drive that night. And she went to my ex-boyfriend's house. Now, her and him used to be close whenever him and I were dating. And I didn't think anything of it until she called him and she kept telling him to come outside of his house so we could fight him. And I'm telling her to stop, but she just keeps laughing the whole time and she always does shit like this. And I was tired of being pulled into shit like this because then I got named the psycho stalker girl. So then I find out that after she went home that night, she texted my ex with this whole elaborate story about how I was the one who made her drive to his house and say all that shit. So fast forward, her and I got into it at school because I told a counselor that she was threatening to unalive herself because I was really worried for her. But then she starts posting stuff about my mental health on social media, saying things like, oh, she has zebra stripe arms. And I fought her after that. Because the only reason why I told our counselor is because I gave a shit about her mental health, like for part 3.